Have a headache? Maybe a sore throat? In today's world, you'd probably reach for an aspirin. Call your doctor. Or, let's be honest, Google your symptoms and convince yourself you're dying. But what if I told you that, in the ancient world, the solution might have involved rubbing crocodile dung on your temples, drinking goat urine, or stuffing your nose with lavender and desperately praying that demons don't think you're tasty? Welcome to Vale of Epochs, where history isn't just strange, it's medically irresponsible. Tonight, we're diving headfirst, not literally. That's how medieval surgeons would have treated concussions, into the world of ancient medical advice. And by medical, I mean, untested, unhinged, and in many cases, accidentally deadly. We'll explore how ancient Egyptians tackled baldness with wild animal fat, how Romans thought urine was the miracle cure, and how medieval Europeans believed flowers in your nostrils could stop a plague. Spoiler, they were wrong. But spectacularly so. So sit back. Try not to eat during this episode, for your own safety. And prepare to feel very grateful for modern medicine, even if your doctor still puts you on hold for 45 minutes. Because if you ever thought your local healthcare was a joke, just wait until you meet the plague doctor who prescribed smelling dead animals as therapy. Let's begin. Picture this: you're a high-ranking official in ancient Egypt, the envy of the Nile. Your sandals are polished, your kilt is pleated, and you've got eyeliner that would make a 2000s emo band jealous. Life is good. Until one day, in the midst of admiring your reflection on the polished surface of a black basalt vase, you spot it. A tiny patch of exposed scalp. A barren desert on the once fertile land of your hairline. No. Ra. No. Not the curse of the balding ones. You panic. Your wife starts suggesting head wraps. Your servants stop making eye contact. Even your pet cat, Bastet, gives you the pity blink. You can't let this happen. Baldness in ancient Egypt wasn't just an aesthetic issue, it was a spiritual crisis. But fear not, for the gods have provided a solution. Or rather, the Ebers Papyrus has. This 3.000-year-old medical text, essentially the ancient version of WebMD if it were written by someone on a peyote trip, holds within its brittle pages the secrets to a full, luscious mane. Or so they claimed. Remedy number 1, hippo fat. Step 1, hunt a hippo. Easy enough, right? Just grab your reed boat, your spear, and your complete disregard for survival. Once you've wrangled the most aggressive semi-aquatic animal on Earth, proceed to harvest its fat. Not for food, not for oil, but to rub directly on your bald spot. Twice daily. Warm it first. Obviously, you're not a barbarian. Remedy number 2, crocodile grease. Because nothing says healthy scalp like smearing the excretions of a prehistoric murder lizard across your dome. Don't forget to whisper a prayer to Sobek, the crocodile-headed god. He's watching, and he's judging your technique. Remedy number 3, porcupine hair. Boiled. Because clearly, the answer to hair loss is to pour more hair, cooked hair. Specifically, on top of it. Logic. But wait, there's more. For those who found animal products a little too pedestrian, the papyrus recommends a delightful blend of burned date pits for fiery regrowth, donkey hoof shavings, because hoof equals keratin, snake skin, for that extra shine, and in some versions, crushed beetles. Because nothing says confidence booster like beetle paste on your temples. These ancient remedies were not simply medicine, they were rituals. Practitioners believed that hair loss wasn't caused by genetics or stress, but by angry deities, demon winds, or moral failings, which, frankly, is still a better excuse than male pattern baldness. Some physicians, if you could call a man with zero formal training in the papyrus fetish a physician, even recommended chanting spells while applying the goo. Like this real one, found in a tomb. Grow, oh hair, like the barley under rain. Let not the north wind shame thee. We have no idea if this worked. But it does sound very motivating for the truly desperate. There was always the ancient version of a hair transplant, wigs. Egyptians were obsessed with wigs. Wigs made of human hair, palm fibers. Or, if you were on a budget, sheep's wool. That's right. You could literally wear a sheep on your head and still be considered fashionable. In fact, Egyptian nobility had entire wig wardrobes, with wigs for mourning, parties, and casual temple visits. If your real hair wouldn't grow, well then, just outwig the problem. Beyoncé would be proud. But perhaps the greatest irony? The very priests who dispensed these remedies were themselves completely bald, by choice. They shaved their heads religiously to maintain purity. So, while they instructed the public to smear crocodile slime for luscious locks, they were walking around like gleaming cue balls of divine hygiene. Now, you might be asking, did any of this work? No. Absolutely not. If anything, it probably clogged the pores, caused severe scalp infections, and gave everyone a distinct rotting zoo aroma. But, like so many things in ancient medicine, it wasn't about results. It was about ritual, belief, and a whole lot of optimism. Today, we have minoxidil, laser therapy, and overpriced shampoo marketed with Greek-sounding ingredients. But let us never forget that our medical ancestors once stood proudly under the Egyptian sun, hair slicked with boiling hippo lard, chanting at the sky and believing they were winning. History, it's full of bold choices, and some truly terrible dermatology. Rome. The empire that gave us aqueducts, roads, the Colosseum, and public urinals full of medical miracles. In modern times, you go to a pharmacy for a cold remedy. In ancient Rome, you'd go to the bathroom, not to dispose of something, no, to collect it, because nothing said get well soon like a cup of warm human urine. Yes, urine, golden, steamy, and straight from the source, was practically a cure-all in Roman times. You had a cough, urine, toothache, gargle some, skin condition, dab a little on like a toner, social anxiety, well, you probably smelled like pee already. So people kept their distance. The Romans weren't just winging this. They had reasons. Terrible reasons. You see, they believed that urine, particularly aged urine, known delightfully as lant, had cleansing, whitening, and even disinfecting properties. And to be fair, they weren't completely wrong. Ammonia is a natural component in urine, and it does have some cleaning power. But they took this minor fact and sprinted with it, all the way to the edge of medical sanity. Let's start with dentistry. Pliny the Elder, Rome's most enthusiastic encyclopedia of everything, and probably the reason we even know this stuff, swore by Portuguese urine as a mouthwash. Yes, not Roman. Portuguese. Because apparently Iberian pee had just the right zing. Like an imported vintage. Ah yes. 12 BC, an excellent year for peasant hydration. You'd rinse, swish, and, we pray, spit. Supposedly, it whitened teeth. And it did, by chemically eroding your enamel and bleaching your soul. Then we have skincare. Have acne, wrinkles, general unattractiveness? The Roman answer was clear: bathe in urine. Elite Roman women were known to buy the urine of healthy young men, a phrase that should never be repeated, and smear it across their faces before bed. It was the original anti-aging serum, brought to you by the power of filtered asparagus and disappointment. But it doesn't stop there. Got an infection? Pour urine on it. Bee sting? Urine. Jellyfish sting? Okay. Fair enough. That one somehow made it into modern beach law. But you can see a trend. Romans had a motto: if in doubt, let it out. They even used urine for laundry. In full seriousness, Roman laundromats, called phoulonicae, were essentially massive urine pits where workers would stomp on clothes with their bare feet. For hours. Imagine being the guy whose job it is to walk barefoot in communal pea sludge while humming a Gladiator theme song and pretending your life has purpose. They didn't stop at physical health either. Roman medical advice dipped its toes into the spiritual. Feeling cursed? Got the evil eye? Just splash some pee around the room. Evil spirits, apparently, had a low tolerance for the smell of public toilets. Can't blame them. But back to medicine. One Roman remedy for sore throats involved heating up urine and inhaling the vapors. Because nothing clears your sinuses quite like a steaming cloud of pea mist. Need a cure for eye infections? Apply urine directly into the eyes. Yes. Eye drops. From a stranger. That stings with historical accuracy. And let's not forget their obsession with urine-based potions, mixtures that included wine, herbs, and fermented urine. Left to stew in clay pots until they smelled medically appropriate. By which they meant, until everyone within 10 feet passed out. Some historians argue the Roman obsession with urine stemmed from a deep, misguided respect for the natural. The body produces it, so it must be good. They didn't yet know about bacteria, germs, or basic decency. And in a twisted way, their logic checks out. If you live in a world where bathing is optional and toilets are decorative today, if someone told you to rub pee on your face, you'd block their number. But back then, it made you cultured. It meant you had read your Galen, trusted your apothecary, and weren't afraid to smell like a back alley after a chariot race. And so, dear viewer, next time you're tempted to roll your eyes at modern detox teas or $300 vitamin drips, just remember, there was a time when the gold standard in medicine was literal golden liquid. We've come a long way. Kind of. Welcome to medieval Europe, a world of castles, cathedrals, and colossally incorrect healthcare. If you thought Roman pee was bad, wait until you hear about the time people treated the Black Death with potpourri. Yes, potpourri, the cure to a plague that wiped out nearly half of Europe was, according to medieval doctors, stuffing flowers up your nose and hoping for the best. You see, medieval medicine was less science and more extremely hopeful herbal fanfiction. Physicians believed that bad smells, known as miasmas, were responsible for disease. Not bacteria. Not viruses. Not fleas on rats. Just air. Evil. Stinky air. Their solution? Fight smell with smell. If the plague reeked of death, then surely a nose full of lavender would keep it out. Logical? Barely. Effective? Absolutely not. But boy, did people commit to it. Let's talk about the plague doctor outfit. You know the one, big black cloak, wide-brimmed hat, leather gloves, and that iconic beak mask. Looks like a cross between a carnival performer and a bird who majored in Gothic studies. That beak, it wasn't just for show. It was stuffed with herbs and flowers, rose petals, mint, cloves, basically the entire spice rack. The idea was that breathing through this floral filter would protect the doctor from the plague. Because if the smell of death is deadly, then the smell of a garden party must be life-saving. They walked through plague-ridden streets like mobile diffusers, waving sticks to keep people away, not realizing they were basically giant walking scented candles surrounded by pestilence. Meanwhile, common folk were told to carry posies, little bundles of herbs and flowers, and sniff them constantly. Some tied them around their necks. Others held them under their noses like medieval aromatherapy addicts. It's even in the nursery rhyme, ring around the rosy. A pocket full of posies. Ashes. Ashes. We all fall down. Yes. That cheerful little song? It's possibly a reference to everyone dying from the plague while clutching flowers like it was a spa day. And the smell-based nonsense didn't stop there. Got a cold? Try burning herbs in your house. Not to breathe in, just to cleanse the bad air. People would light rosemary, myrrh, or frankincense until the room was thick with holy smoke and choking guests. If you didn't die from disease, you'd pass out from smoke inhalation. Some towns even lit giant bonfires in the streets, believing that the fire would purify the air. In reality, it just filled the already suffering lungs of the people with ash, soot, and a faint smell of roasted regret. Let's not forget the wonderfully tragic idea of using exotic perfumes as disease repellents. The rich would bathe in rose water and wear sachets of dried flowers like medieval cologne. Not because it helped, but because if they were going to die, they might as well smell expensive doing it. And then there were those who believed the solution was to never bathe at all. Yes. Really. Some people thought water opened the pores, letting in disease vapors. So, they avoided washing entirely and just layered perfume on top. Imagine walking through a crowded plague market, shoulder to shoulder with people who haven't bathed in 6 months but are wearing 10 layers of medieval Axe body spray made of musk and crushed petals. Charming. And a cherry on top. Bloodletting was still a thing. Got a headache? Cut open a vein. Sore throat? Slice and bleed. Cough? Let's remove half your blood and see what happens. Spoiler alert, what happens is death. If you were lucky enough to survive all this aromatic insanity, it was probably by accident, or because you lived far enough from everyone else to not breathe their medical incense. So next time you sneeze and reach for a tissue, be glad you're not being prescribed rose petals, incense, and a horrifying bird mask by someone named Brother Jeffrey the Leech Specialist. Ancient China. Land of philosophy, paper, fireworks, and absolutely terrifying medical advice that could kill faster than a Mongol cavalry charge. Let's start with a name that probably rings a bell. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. You know, the guy who built the terracotta army and standardized writing, and then tried to live forever by drinking literal mercury. Yes, mercury. As in the shiny liquid metal that's toxic enough to make your brain leak, metaphorically, until it does so literally. Ancient Chinese alchemists believed mercury held magical, immortality-granting properties. So Qin Shi Huang swallowed pills and elixirs filled with cinnabar, mercury sulfide, hoping to become an undying god. Instead, he became a cautionary tale. The mercury didn't make him immortal, it made him mad. Historical records suggest he became increasingly paranoid, erratic, and possibly glowing in the dark. The more elixirs of life he consumed, the faster death sprinted toward him, probably yelling, "I'm here to detox your delusions." And he wasn't alone. Taoist alchemists, operating somewhere between science and sorcery, brewed tonics with ingredients like arsenic, lead, and sulfur, a cocktail that sounds more like a villain's smoothie than a health tonic. Want eternal life? Bottoms up. Then there's traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, which contains many fascinating ideas, some truly insightful, others, well, let's just say less recommended for modern use. Take for example the concept of balancing yin and yang, or the 5 elements in your body: fire, water, earth, metal, and wood. Sounds poetic, but in practice, if your wood energy was too strong, a doctor might tell you to eat burnt turtle shell. If your fire was too high, drink a soup made from crushed pearls and deer antler. Delicious. Got a fever? That means your yang is overpowering your yin. The fix? Cool you down with a paste of powdered rhino horn. No, this is not only useless, but now also illegal, so please don't. Constipated? No worries. We have, wait for it, dry dog feces. Sometimes burned, sometimes brewed. The name? Yellow soup. If that doesn't make you feel better, it will definitely make you stop eating. There's also the famous cure-all, tiger bone wine, for aches, pains, and boosting vital energy. Tiger bones were steeped in rice wine for months. Yes, Nothing says healing like drinking the ghost of an endangered apex predator. But it gets weirder. Child urine. Yes. Again with urine. Apparently. Young boys' pee, especially that of a pure child, whatever that meant, was believed to cure sore throats and fevers. Ancient texts even describe how to distill and boil it for maximum effect. So next time you're feeling a little sniffly, maybe just drink water. Please. And if you thought acupuncture was as far as it went, not even close. In some dynasties, healers practiced a therapy called moxibustion, burning dried mugwort, a type of herb, on the skin. Sometimes directly on acupuncture points. It was like aromatherapy meets fire hazard. Done right, it could help stimulate the body. Done wrong, you were one smoldering ember away from becoming a barbecue enthusiast against your will. To treat insomnia, some doctors recommended placing a dead lizard under your pillow. The logic? Lizards are chill. So obviously, their ghostly nap energy will seep into your dreams and calm your restless soul. Or, you'll just wake up screaming, "Why is there a lizard in my pillow?" Let's not forget jade pills, which were meant to purify the body. They were beautiful. And they were also made with ground minerals that included lead. It's a great way to feel fancy for the last week of your life. But amidst all the chaos, it's worth noting, ancient Chinese medicine also included brilliant observations, herbal remedies that modern science still studies, detailed diagnostic methods like pulse reading, and a holistic view of health that emphasized prevention over cure. Unfortunately, that wisdom often had to share space with immortality via metallic poisoning. So yes, while not every ancient Chinese treatment was a death sentence, a good number were just very enthusiastic suicide missions disguised as spa treatments. Now, let's take a magic carpet ride to the ancient Middle East, a region that was, in many ways, the intellectual heart of early medicine. While medieval Europe was still trying to balance humors by bleeding people with leeches, the Islamic Golden Age gave us hospitals, surgical instruments, and doctors who could diagnose illnesses without sacrificing a goat. But, of course, things were never entirely sane. Let's begin with Avicenna, Ibn Sina, the OG medical influencer. His masterpiece The Canon of Medicine became the go-to medical reference in both East and West for over 600 years. He promoted ideas like quarantine during epidemics, a radical thought in a time when plague was often blamed on bad smells or astrology. And he actually believed in evidence-based medicine. Imagine that. But not every treatment in the book was a hit. Got a headache? Ibn Sina might recommend a compress of rose water and vinegar. Soothing. But if that fails, how about placing a freshly cut pigeon on your head? Not as romantic. Let's talk about cupping therapy, which is still used in some wellness circles today. The principle? Stick hot glass cups on your back to draw out the bad blood. If you're lucky, you'll look like a polka-dotted toad. If you're not, you'll get second-degree burns and still have the flu. It was like medieval detox, with suction marks. Now, for something a little more explosive. Feeling bloated? Suffering from gas? One popular cure is inhaling smoke from burning camel dung. Yes. Inhale. Not avoid. Apparently, the hot fumes were believed to cleanse the inner wind. Ironically, it probably just replaced one kind of gas with another. In early Arabic and Persian medicine, spiders were sometimes used for wound treatment. No, they weren't trained like tiny, sinister doctors. Rather, doctors crushed them and applied the remains as a paste. Think of it as Spider-Man meets skincare, but in the worst possible way. Got epilepsy? One medieval prescription recommended wearing a wolf tooth necklace. Why? Because clearly the problem is not in your brain, it's that your neck just wasn't accessorized enough. But don't worry. Middle Eastern doctors also tried to take your emotional life seriously. Suffering from melancholy? Perhaps you've been possessed by a sad jinn. The cure? A blend of herbal tea, and possibly an exorcism to treat insomnia. Some texts advised sleeping with a warm stone under your back and chanting verses from the Quran. That actually sounds peaceful. Until you read the part that says if that doesn't work. Burying 7 hairs from a black dog under your bed will scare the evil spirits away. You might still be awake. But at least now you're terrified and confused. But hey. This was also the age where brilliant minds like Al-Zahrawi invented surgical tools that resembled modern scalpels and forceps. Where pharmacies were established in Baghdad as early as the 9th century. And where mental illness was treated with compassion, not exorcism or fire. Still, for every step forward in science, there was another in creative misdirection. Take, for example, the eye treatment involving boiled crocodile fat mixed with powdered pearls. It's not clear if it cured anything, but you definitely ended up broke and possibly blind. Or the belief that writing magical letters on a watermelon and then eating it could cure jaundice. Ancient prescription, eat half a melon covered in ancient script. Side effects may include diabetes, illiteracy, and being laughed out of the hospital. One particularly colorful cure for hemorrhoids. Sit over a steaming pit of onions and vinegar. Preferably while chanting. You're basically making a salad with your. Well, don't try this at home. And finally, one that actually almost makes sense. In some traditions, physicians recommended smelling strong perfumes or musk to revive the soul and ward off the plague. Now, while perfume won't protect you from viral outbreaks, it at least ensures you die smelling fabulous. Which, let's admit, is very Middle Eastern chic. In short, ancient Middle Eastern medicine was a heady cocktail of science, superstition, and spice. It laid the groundwork for modern medicine while occasionally wandering off into ham. Maybe don't rub spider guts on that rash territory. But for every camel dung cure, there was a genuinely revolutionary discovery, and that deserves some respect, and a little side eye. Welcome to the Indian subcontinent, land of ancient wisdom, spicy food, and just a dash of extreme medical improvisation. Let's start with Ayurveda, a system of medicine that's been around for over 3,000 years. And hey, credit where credit's due, it's one of the oldest organized medical systems on Earth. It emphasizes balance between the body's elements, Vata, air, Pitta, fire, and Kapha, earth plus water. If these sound like Pokemon types, don't worry, you're not alone. Vedic doctors didn't just throw turmeric at everything, okay? Actually, sometimes they did. But their treatments often included dietary recommendations, massage, herbal decoctions, and elaborate purification rituals like Panchakarma. What's Panchakarma? Well, it's a 5-step detox involving things like vomiting therapy, Vamana, oil enemas, Basti, and bloodletting, Raktamoksana. It's basically a medical cleanse that says, let's empty your body from every possible exit. The ancient version of a juice cleanse, if the juice was ghee and came out both ends. Let's dive into the spice cabinet. Got a sore throat? Gargle with turmeric and salt, not bad. Honestly. Got a fever? Drink fenugreek water, that's tolerable. Got leprosy? No problem. Just rub crushed insects and cow bile on your skin. If it doesn't cure you, it might scare the disease away out of sheer horror. And let's not forget cow urine. Yes, cow urine. According to some ancient texts, and some modern practitioners who really need a stern talking to, cow pee was a literal cure-all, cancer, diabetes, acne, heartbreak, you name it. The idea was that the sacredness of the cow extended to all its fluids. Imagine being sick and your doctor says, take this sacred elixir thrice daily on an empty stomach. You ask, is it infused with holy herbs? Doctor, no. It's just cow pee. But that's not even the strangest part. To treat asthma, Vedic texts sometimes recommended smoking powdered herbs wrapped in dried banana leaves. So yes, the solution to your shortness of breath was inhaling something into your lungs. Brilliant. Or take the ancient cure for ear infections, pour warm mustard oil infused with garlic and onion juice directly into the ear canal. Congratulations. Now your head smells like a street vendor's samosa stall. Got indigestion? Ancient Indian physicians might give you a paste made from ghee, cumin, and powdered pearls. That's right, pearls. Because nothing says soothing the stomach like a mineral normally used in necklaces. One bizarre case involves treating mental illness with gold ash. Literal burnt gold. The patient would be given ashes of thin gold leaf mixed into honey. This was thought to align the mind chakras. What it actually did was align your bank account with zero. Speaking of chakras, those spiritual energy centers running through the body, many ailments were believed to result from chakra misalignment. If your heart chakra was blocked, you might feel sadness or fatigue. The cure? Chanting, yoga, and in extreme cases, hanging upside down while being massaged with cow butter. We're not making this up. And then there's the concept of nausea, nose therapy. Feeling stressed? Pour medicated oil into your nostrils while lying flat on your back. If done wrong, you'll either cough violently or, best case, smell like spiced furniture for a week. Now, to be fair, Ayurveda also had some genuinely impressive insights for its time. It emphasized hygiene, digestion, mental health, and prevention, concepts that wouldn't fully catch on in the West until centuries later. Ancient Indian surgeons like Sushruta were performing nose reconstructions, rhinoplasty, using skin grafts back when Europeans were still trying to remove demons with drills. But for every brilliant herbal infusion, there was a let's smear this sacred dung and see what happens moment. Like the treatment for epilepsy, placing a heated metal coin on the tongue while chanting mantras. Nothing says safe and effective like minor oral burns during a seizure, or the use of peacock feathers dipped in honey to treat memory loss. Honestly, that just sounds like a wizard's lunch. And let's not forget the treatment for snake bite. Make the patient sniff the burnt remains of the same type of snake. If the smell knocks them out, they're cured. If not, well, maybe they had a different snake. In conclusion, ancient South Asian medicine was a mesmerizing fusion of logic, spirituality, and occasional madness. Ayurveda continues to be respected globally, and rightly so. But just remember, not every remedy involving cow urine and powdered coral needs to make a comeback. East Asia, home to some of the world's most refined philosophies, intricate herbal traditions, and also a few medical suggestions that feel like they came straight from a fever dream. Let's begin in ancient China, where medicine was deeply intertwined with Taoist philosophy. The core idea? Health comes from balance, yin and yang, qi, your life force, and the 5 elements. All sounds very elegant. Until someone recommends sticking burning herbs up your nose to balance your spleen energy. Traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, offered plenty of remedies that would make modern pharmacists nervous. Got a headache? Easy, boil a soup made from deer antlers, dried lizards, and ginseng. You won't remember your headache. Mostly because you'll be too busy figuring out what you just drank. And if that doesn't work, maybe it's your qi. So you lie down while a practitioner places burning moxa, dried mugwort, on various points of your body, literally setting herbs on fire inches from your skin. This is called moxibustion. And yes, it's still practiced today. Does it stimulate healing? Maybe. Does it smell like your grandma's curtains caught fire? Definitely. Now let's talk about cupping therapy. You know, those round red circles on Olympic athletes' backs that look like they lost a fight with an octopus. This practice dates back over 2,000 years. when healers used hollowed-out bamboo cups heated with fire, then applied them to the skin to suck out bad energy. If your therapist shows up with matches and bamboo, either you're about to be healed or grilled. Feeling emotionally unstable? According to some Han Dynasty texts, the solution was to wear a jade pendant shaped like a tortoise around your neck to absorb bad vibes. Who needs therapy when you have a stylish reptile necklace? Meanwhile, in ancient Japan, medicine leaned on Chinese influence but added its own flair, like urine therapy. Yes. Again. Apparently, people in Nara period Japan believed that drinking small amounts of their own urine every morning helped purify the body. What it actually purified was your friend group, because no one wanted to sit next to you. Also, some Japanese healers believed sleeping near pine trees could align your soul with the spirit of nature. That's poetic. Unless it's winter and you're hugging a tree while freezing to death. Now for the really intense stuff, live worm therapy. In some Chinese folk remedies, open wounds were treated by applying live crawling maggots, yes, maggots, to eat the rotting flesh. This wasn't completely irrational. Maggot therapy is actually medically sound, as they only eat dead tissue. But in the 6th century, this practice came with zero hygiene and no anesthesia. Just a strong stomach and a faint hope of not dying from infection. And speaking of infection, one popular fever remedy was to soak a silk cloth in vinegar and apply it to the forehead while chanting the names of healing gods. If that didn't work, you were encouraged to swallow powdered pearls, because what's better for a high fever than tiny rocks ground up from jewelry? Have a cough. Traditional Vietnamese texts from the Ly dynasty recommended boiling bitter melon with dried frogs. Not just the legs, the whole frog. Meanwhile, Mongolian healers favored smoking dried sheep dung over a fire and inhaling the fumes. The belief? It would dry out the wetness in your lungs. It also dried out your hope in humanity. But perhaps the most extreme cure came from Korean Joseon era texts, which advised soaking earthworms in rice wine for several days, then drinking the solution as a cure for anemia. Some called it earth vitality. Most modern people would call it a war crime in a wine bottle. To their credit, East Asian medicine also gifted the world acupuncture, a system that involves inserting needles at specific points to influence the body's energy. It's been refined over centuries and is still widely respected. However, the original manuals suggested treating depression by sticking needles in your scalp and earlobes while chanting Confucian texts. The placebo effect never stood a chance. And finally, in one early Japanese scroll, a cure for excessive sadness was to sit under the moon, eat pickled plums, and listen to bamboo flutes, which sounds more like a very niche spa day than medical advice. But hey, at least it didn't involve urine. So what can we learn here? Ancient East Asian medicine was a beautiful mix of philosophy, nature, and spiritual belief. But just like anywhere else in the ancient world, some of the advice was pure genius, and some of it sounded like a dare. If someone offers you worm wine for your anemia, maybe just say you're feeling fine. Welcome to the ancient Americas, where medicine was less about sterile hospitals and more about spirit journeys, howling rituals, and, on occasion, drinking lizard broth under a full moon. From the mighty empires of the Aztecs and Incas to the deeply spiritual Native American tribes, healing was a sacred business, and occasionally a psychedelic one. Let's start with the Aztecs, who had an entire god dedicated to medicine, Putecatl, the lord of healing, and also of drunkenness. A promising combo, because if your medicine doesn't cure you, at least it numbs the pain. Aztec medical texts advised cures for everything from toothaches to broken bones. Toothache? Just chew on chili peppers and rub your gums with crushed beetles. That's right, fire ants. But make it dental care. And if your teeth still hurt, maybe that's the universe telling you to give up corn for internal issues. Aztec healers might prescribe a tea made from tlilteotl, a plant known to cause intense sweating, nausea, and spiritual clarity. Symptoms may include enlightenment, or vomiting into a clay pot for several hours. Then we have the Inca civilization, who believed illness was often caused by angry mountain gods or ancestral spirits. The remedy? A ritual offering known as Capacoca, which involved offerings like food, textiles, and occasionally, a human. Yes. If your cough was bad enough, someone might have to walk up a mountain and, stay there permanently. Good luck explaining that to your HMO. More down to earth, literally, was the use of guinea pigs, not as pets, but as diagnostic tools. Healers would rub a live guinea pig over a patient's body, then dissect it to see which organ looked diseased. If you ever wondered what ancient MRI scans looked like, imagine a confused rodent being used like a furry, squeaky stethoscope. But if that sounds extreme, Native American tribes across North America had their own rich, and equally surprising, healing traditions. The Sweat Lodge, for example, was a cornerstone of purification. You sit in a small dome-shaped hut. Water is poured over hot stones, and you sweat out toxins, sins, and probably your will to live. It's a cross between a sauna and a spiritual interrogation. And then comes the Vision Quest. Not technically medicine, but if you were suffering from illness of the spirit, this was your prescription: head into the wilderness alone, fast for several days, and wait for a vision. If your spirit animal appeared and told you to drink cactus juice, congratulations, you now have a purpose and a headache. Speaking of cactus juice, the peyote cactus, used by various tribes, induced intense hallucinations and was believed to help connect the patient with the spirit world. Side effects included dizziness, euphoria, and seeing your dead ancestors critique your life choices. Moving into Central America, the Maya were no less creative. If you had stomach troubles, you might be given a stew made from boiled lizards and herbs, served warm, presumably with a side of "why is this happening to me?" to balance your inner heat. You might also be prescribed a steam bath followed by a cold plunge, followed by vigorous chanting while being smudged with burning copal resin. And don't forget tobacco. To the ancient tribes, it wasn't just for smoking, it was medicine. You could chew it, brew it, inhale it, or, brace yourself, apply it as a salve directly onto wounds. Nothing says speedy recovery like rubbing raw tobacco into a sword injury. In times of trauma, healers known as shamans would perform intense rituals. This might involve drumming, chanting, and burning sage, while the patient lay surrounded by carved animal bones. One practice involved whistling into the ear of the sick person, to confuse the evil spirits. Alternatively, it just confused the patient into feeling slightly better. And if none of that worked, there was always the blowing ceremony, where the shaman would literally blow air onto the body parts that hurt, a very gentle way of saying, "I've run out of ideas but this might help." Yet, not all treatments were spiritual. Some were surprisingly practical. Willow bark was used for pain relief. Sound familiar? That's where aspirin comes from. And cranberry poultices helped with infections. So while some advice sounded mystical, some of it was early pharmacology in action. To sum up, in the ancient Americas, healing wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and occasionally required a rodent and a cactus trip. If you're looking for a health journey that involves intense sweating, talking to trees, and maybe biting a chili pepper, this was the place. Just maybe leave the guinea pig alone. Welcome to ancient Africa, where the line between doctor, priest, and sorcerer was blurrier than a patient with a high fever. Healing wasn't just about herbs and ointments, it was about stories, spirits, and sometimes dancing until you passed out. In many African cultures, illness was rarely just a random biological accident. No. No, sickness had a motive. Maybe you offended your ancestors. Maybe a neighbor cursed your goats. Or maybe the village gossip was casting hexes because you borrowed her calabash and never gave it back. Diagnosis required not just a good eye, but a strong connection to the spirit world. Let's start with the traditional healers, Ngangas, Sangomas, Babalaos, different names across the continent. But all of them operated like spiritual GPs. They didn't just ask you to say they asked the spirits. And if the spirits said you've been hexed, well, get ready for some ritualistic unhexing. One common diagnostic tool? Throwing bones, literally. The healer would cast a collection of bones, shells, stones, or other symbolic items onto a mat and read the way they landed. Like some divine Scrabble board. If a chicken knucklebone pointed east, it meant you had a stomach bug. If it landed near a bead, maybe someone cursed your lunch. For treatments, you might get a concoction of roots, bark, and herbs, often boiled into a thick, earthy brew that looked like it came from a mud puddle, and tasted worse. But don't be fooled, many of these mixtures had potent medicinal value. Acacia bark for inflammation, devil's claw for arthritis, baobab fruit for digestion. But herbs were only half the magic. The other half: smoke, spells, and ceremonies. Picture this: you're in a small hut filled with aromatic smoke, drums beating, a healer chanting incantations while waving a burning bundle of herbs around your head. You're not sure if you're being cured or recruited into a boy band of spirits. But by the end, you definitely feel something. In parts of West Africa, illnesses like mental distress or chronic pain were believed to be caused by spiritual imbalance, so treatments involved ritual dancing, singing, and possession by ancestral spirits. If you fainted mid-dance, that could mean the spirit entered you, or that you skipped breakfast. In ancient Egypt, medical practices were recorded on papyri, like the famous Ebers Papyrus, which included 700 magical spells and remedies. One cure for night terrors? Recite the spell of Ra, place onions under your bed, and bind your left toe with linen. If you slept well after that, it wasn't because of the onions, it was because everyone else left you alone. Further south, in Central and Eastern Africa, animal symbolism played a big role. If a snake slithered into your home, it could be a sign of ancestral presence, so you didn't chase it away. You offered it milk. Meanwhile, if you were sick and dreamed of a lion, it might mean your spirit was ready for battle, or that you ate too much warthog stew before bed. There was also a focus on protective amulets. Healers would craft talismans out of beads, feathers, bone, or even carved wood, inscribed with spiritual meanings. These were worn around the neck, waist, or hidden in clothes. If you wore enough of them, you looked like you were dressed by an over-enthusiastic craft fair, but hey, you were protected. And of course, no mention of African healing is complete without drumming. The drum beat wasn't just music, it was medicine. Specific rhythms were believed to connect with certain energies or spirits. For example, if you had a fever, the drums might cool your soul. If you had bad luck, a different rhythm would be played to drive away evil forces. If you had both, well, you got a remix. What's impressive is that many of these practices weren't just mystical, they were effective. Herbal pharmacology was deeply developed, with remedies that science today confirms as genuinely therapeutic. For example, the bark of the willow tree, used in parts of North Africa, contains salicin, essentially ancient aspirin, and Artemisia afra, used for respiratory issues, is still used in modern herbal medicine. So yes, while the rituals might seem strange to the modern eye, blowing smoke, singing to bones, or yelling at your neighbor's goat, it's worth remembering that traditional African medicine was a complex, holistic system. One that treated the body, the mind, the spirit, and occasionally the livestock. And if all else failed, you'd probably get a very dramatic ceremony. Some chicken feathers. And a strong herbal tea that knocked you out for 2 days. Which, frankly, isn't that different from modern cold medicine. Let's be honest. After everything we've seen, from hippo fat scalp masks to pea-based cough syrup, plague-deflecting posies to haunted sniffing monks, one question still lingers like a medieval bathhouse. How the hell did the human species make it this far? Because if history has proven anything, it's that our ancestors were both incredibly creative and stunningly wrong. They looked at mold and said, delicious. They saw vomit and said, let's call that a cure. And when someone sneezed, they didn't reach for tissues, they reached for leeches. Or garlic necklaces. Or a jar of dead spiders mixed with olive oil. And yet, here we are. Typing. Watching videos. Wearing pants, mostly. And, thankfully, not drinking cow dung to cure a sore throat. So how? 2 things, resilience and luck. Human bodies are surprisingly good at surviving nonsense. And human minds? Even better at making it up. The thing is, many ancient remedies weren't completely useless. Some actually worked, accidentally. Honey, for example, has natural antibacterial properties. So when Egyptians slapped it on wounds, they weren't just doing a sticky sacrifice to Ra, they were pioneering antiseptic care. Same with chewing on willow bark, ancient pain relief that would later give us aspirin. Even some magical rituals had psychosomatic benefits. If you believe dancing around a tree will cure your headache, and then your headache mysteriously goes away, was it the placebo, the tree, or just dehydration? Doesn't matter. Victory is victory. Of course. For every remedy that helped, there were 10 that involved boiling goats, summoning spirits, or applying fish to questionable body parts. And if you've survived all that, congratulations, you just won the historical lottery. It's also worth mentioning that ancient medicine wasn't only about bizarre ingredients. It was often deeply communal. Healing was a shared ritual. People gathered. They prayed. They sang. They touched each other's faces with concern, not ideal in a plague. But you get the sentiment. In a world without anesthesia or antibiotics, compassion was half the medicine, and a strong liver was the other half. So perhaps the real miracle isn't that we survived ancient medical advice. It's that we did so while also inventing civilization, writing poetry, building pyramids, painting cathedrals, and somehow, not dying of leech overdose. And yes, we laugh now at the bloodletting, the animal parts, the mummified pigeons tied to feet, but let's not be too smug. In a few hundred years, someone might look at our era and say, wait, they put needles full of toxins in their face to look younger. They glued tiny bits of plastic to their eyeballs so they could see better. They willingly listened to health advice from strangers on TikTok. So let's end on a high note. Ancient medicine was weird, gross, often fatal, and sometimes unintentionally brilliant. It was trial and error, heavy on the error, but it paved the way for modern science, pharmacology, and the decision to not rub dead frogs on your skin when you have eczema. Let's be grateful that today's prescription isn't grind up a lizard, mix with wine, and scream at the moon. And if it is, please, get a second opinion.